golden rule in times of crisis is to focus on what you can control because we don't have control over so many things. And focusing so much on the things that are outside of our control is not going to be helpful. One way to think of your thoughts is to think if they're truthful and helpful. Because if it's not helpful, then maybe it's not something you should spend all of your attention on. And I know right now there's a lot of political turmoil, there's a lot going on in the world, people feel very anxious. But to the extent that you can, just try and focus on the things you have control over. Things like your routine, your relationships, the things you find meaning in, having as good of a day as possible. Don't try and spend all day thinking of this if you can. Obviously, if you're in a tough situation right now, then maybe you would have to think about this, and it's a privilege to not think about it. And I'm just telling you the things that help me, and I'm not saying to completely ignore everything that's going on. No, you don't have to ignore everything that's going on, but don't let it control your decisions in terms of like the things that you were already going to do with your life. Like some people, they'll stay in bed all day to try and feel better about the situation going on. But that won't be helpful. What's helpful is still sticking to your routine, still maintaining your relationships, still focusing on the things that you would have otherwise, because those things are in your control, and that's part of your life. But all of this political turmoil, it's not in our control. So it's not something that we should constantly be focusing on. And again, I'm not saying to ignore it. At least for me, the more I focus on things that are outside of my control, the worse my life gets. Because when I'm so focused on the things that were outside of my control, then I had both problems, right? Because I had problems of not fixing the things that were inside my control and also worrying about the things that were outside of my control. It added to my problems, not took away from them. So it's like, even though things seem pretty terrible right now, you could still focus on the things that are inside of your control, because if you don't, then those things get worse too. So it's like you might as well try and make the most meaningful experience out of what you're dealing with right now and focus on the things you can have an impact in. And then you'll start to see that you have some autonomy there, some actual decision making that's in your relevant control. And the other thing is, now we live in a 24/7 news cycle, which means you could always see updates about what's going on in the world, all of the problems in the world. And that's not what our minds are meant to deal with. You're not meant to deal with all of the problems in the world. You're meant to deal with the problems that you have control over. It's not built to handle every single problem in the world. That's not reasonable. So don't put this pressure on yourself to worry about everything. I really hope this video is helpful. And listen, I don't think it's easy to focus on the things that are inside of your control. Of course, our mind is going to wander. Of course, there's things we're going to think about, but just do the best that you can, because even though it won't be easy, I think it'll be worth it. Life's not easy, but it's worth it. Take care.